Bonjour, the name is Pierre Huguenot, coming at you live from Paris's Fashion Week. Oh, what is this? We have a very young woman in a crop top. What designer is she wearing? PETA? What is this PETA?
So, if you haven't heard of a group called PETA, I envy you, because it means you're on Twitter a lot less than I am, and your mental health is probably a lot better. PETA, which stands for the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, recently made headlines for interrupting an event at Paris's Fashion Week hosted by Victoria Beckham. They were quickly kicked out, but not before, in my opinion, serving. I also really love the cute little jog of the security guard right there. You'd think after a certain point the event organizers would stop letting in people with white PETA crop tops into the event, but, you know, what do I know about fashion? This is one of thousands of media stunts that PETA has done since they were founded, and honestly, given what we'll talk about in the video, one of the tamer ones. PETA is one of the most widely mocked organizations in the entire world, and one of the least understood. And their outrageous advertisements, which we'll talk about in this video, have generated both a lot of press and a lot of hostility. Their controversy extends beyond their advertisements, though, and I want to take a look at the entire organization, how they started, what they stand for, what they've done that's good, what they've done that's bad, and if their incredibly negative reputation is justified or not. And first things first, we have to talk about their incredibly bizarre advertising and social media strategy. Before we get into that, though, really quickly, just want to say I was overwhelmed by all the support on the last video. Thank you guys so much. Making YouTube videos is something I really genuinely, truly enjoy. And I was just overwhelmed by all that support. If you like my channel, if you like my content, please consider subscribing. Over 98% of you are not subscribed. It helps me grow the channel. I love doing sort of these big deep dive videos, as well as covering pop culture, news, all that stuff. 1 to 2 videos every week, and we've got an Oscar video coming out at the end of this week. So please consider subscribing. Love and appreciate you all. PETA is a controversial-ass charity, to put it mildly. So before we get into all that, I do want to start with some of their relatively non-controversial ads, like this one. Yep, despite this image getting ratioed on their Twitter, of which they pay $10,000 for a gold checkmark, this is actually one of their non-controversial ads, if you can believe it. Now, this post was meant to bring attention to the Iditarod dog race. It's a very famous dog race in Alaska, but of course, because it's Twitter, people were instead talking about the shall we say, the sexual connotations that this image might have. You know, maybe PETA's right, maybe we're no better than animals, or maybe PETA should have just given them underwear, because I really didn't want to see some unsolicited ass cheek, courtesy of PETA on my Twitter feed. I do love the very chill look of this dog who's commanding the humans. I feel like he'd be very approachable at a bar, you know, someone I could talk to if my day was very rough. Oh, stop it. Now, it is worth noting that the Iditarod dog race has faced controversy before because some dogs do die over the course of having the event, which has been held for several decades, and they have had major sponsors pull out. So, okay, maybe PETA's got a point, maybe they're tackling on an important issue. Let's see what else PETA's gotten up to these days.
And 1, 2, 3, say baby slaughtered for veal.
Baby slaughtered for veal.
Dehorning and tail docking.
Say cheese. No.
Oh, okay, so PETA's taking their time to go after the social convention of saying cheese during photographs? Really? This is an organization that has $90 million of revenue, and this is what they're spending their time and money on? Okay. Now, this advertisement kind of gets to the root of what PETA's marketing and communication strategy is, which is, I want attention now, I want a lot of attention, I want good or bad attention, but probably bad attention, I want all forms of attention. It's cute. Reminds myself of a much younger me, and as an only child, that was a very achievable goal for me, but I wasn't trying to tell people about the ills of cheese. And this is not speculation, although it's pretty obvious if you have, 2 eyes and a working brain, but this was confirmed in an interview with the head of their 22-person social media team, where they basically said that all the negative attention that they get is the work of trolls. But that's not entirely accurate. And yes, on every viral piece of content on PETA's page, you're going to find people posting pictures of steak, talking about how fun it is to eat meat, which, I'm sorry, you're an asshole if you do that. You have the option fully to say nothing. This video is not about taking a stance on vegetarianism versus veganism or even eating meat, but it's worth looking at what PETA is doing to accomplish their goal with these advertisements, which is what I'm trying to get into. Because as much as you can have an obnoxious meat eater, you certainly can have an obnoxious vegan, which brings me to the next post. This infographic went viral, warning about the dangers of using speciest language. Yeah, you don't be speciest, guys. That's a real concern that we have in 21st century America. And while a lot of these are ridiculous, like feed a fed horse, or feed 2 birds with 1 scone, why are the birds eating scones? Are they French or are they just pretentious? It's hard to tell. The one that kind of stands out to me is bring home the bagels, which, as a native New Yorker, I think kind of appeals to me. I do, in fact, love bagels, probably more than I love bacon, because bacon will kill me much faster than bagels will. But this is the question worth asking as we get into a couple more of these advertisements. If 50 million people see what you have to say, but 49 million of them are basically just mocking you and not believing what you have to say, and if anything, becoming even more entrenched in their own views, is your media strategy successful? I would argue no, but you can draw your own conclusions. Who said that? There must be an echo in this room. If there's 2 things PETA loves, they're cartoons and holidays. So let's take a look at this one around Christmas time, featuring a sheep and a girl both crying because she got a pair of Uggs. And PETA, I don't really think you guys should be surprised that Santa's using animal products in his gifts. I mean, Santa's not really too kind to animals. He's kind of universally known for having 12 of them drive his fat ass all around the entire world every year. I'm not surprised his Uggs use animal products in them. Now, PETA also loves Thanksgiving, which we can tell from this image, which is a fun little twist on how we usually do it, of a family of turkeys eating a human. But I think the more important lesson from this image is that PETA, and by extension, the turkey community, do not consider mac and cheese to be a Thanksgiving side. And damn it, they're wrong! Thanksgiving is fundamentally a holiday where mac and cheese is such a good fit. It belongs on that table, turkeys. What are you doing? Although I guess that gets into the question, in this world, are there turkeys eating the cows? Are they milking the cows? Where are the cows in this fictitious scenario? PETA, please give us more details. But something that would actually be on the Thanksgiving table if turkeys were bigger and real in this scenario? Meat. A community note got attached to this very viral tweet basically telling us what turkeys eat. And turkeys, as it would have it, are omnivores who eat mice and lizards. So in a world where turkeys are much bigger and are the apex species, it's very possible that they would be eating humans. Now, does having a very, very, very viral post where everyone who sees it basically sees, okay, if the shoe was on the other foot, turkeys would possibly be eating humans, does that really advance the cause of veganism? I would argue it probably just re-entrenches people who are already going to eat turkey, that their decision is kind of based and rooted in nature. But that gets kind of to the core of their communication strategy, which they claim to do. They just want attention and engagement. Okay, well, you've got all this engagement, but now everybody who sees it thinks, okay, well, maybe I'm actually making the correct decision to eat meat. For much of white America, bland, under-seasoned, and dry meat, but meat nonetheless. So have you actually accomplished your goal? I would argue probably not. And a couple years ago, they dabbled with a little bit of homophobia by making a very obvious gay joke with their Thanksgiving post. And I just want to say, listen, homophobia aside, bottoms, if you're watching this right now, pay attention, because there's no shame in being a bottom and being fucked in the ass, right? There's no shame in it. Even what this image would have you to believe, you are worthy, you are valid, you are loved, regardless. Take that to heart. Now, a little bit later in the video, we're going to get into their actually genuinely offensive advertisement campaigns with real consequences, because, making a bottom joke, unfortunately, is pretty permissible in our society. But let's take a look at this one, also warning about speciesist language. So yes, the word pet is now problematic for PETA. Can't say pet anymore. Instead, they would prefer you use terms straight out of a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. So I have to tell my level 10 cleric Amy that I am now her guardian, and we have to work together, and she is my animal companion to climb the mountain of sorrow and defeat the dragon and take the gold. Although I probably couldn't defeat the dragon in PETA's own rules, because that would also be unethical. So we can't harm the dragon, but we gotta steal the gold somehow, Amy. Now, I think that a lot of people see this image and they think this is clearly a joke. No one could possibly be serious about this. They just want attention. And while they do want attention, they're really not joking, as I found out when I was researching the ideology of the people who founded PETA. So PETA was founded in Virginia in 1980 by 2 people named Ingrid Newkirk and Alex Pacheco. And they made headlines in 1981 when they did an undercover investigation to reveal that there were very poor conditions of a monkey testing facility in Maryland. Now this would go on to make major news, and even though the researchers claim that their brutal experiments on these monkeys allowed them to create new treatments, the person responsible for running this lab had the first ever conviction for mistreatment of lab animals. Although that conviction was later overturned, there was actual meaningful change in US government policy as a result of PETA breaking this news. Now PETA, for their part, has always wanted to completely ban animal testing, which most scientists will tell you is unrealistic, and one scientist told me about when we were on a Hinge date together. I feel like every video I've just got an anecdote about a horrible Hinge date I've had, but here's another one. Now obviously this story and some of the other stuff we're going to get into is pretty heavy. There's not going to be any sort of images or any of that because I feel like that kind of just distracts from what I'm trying to tell you, which is just the facts. If you're interested in learning or reading more about it, as always, all my resources that I got to make this video are in the description. And after the Silver Springs monkey case, PETA would continue to rapidly expand throughout the globe while still being based in Norfolk, Virginia. And just banning animal testing is kind of the tip of the iceberg as to what PETA actually believes, more specifically the beliefs of their co-founder and current president, Ingrid Newkirk, including some of the obvious things where I think you can clearly make an argument and many people not affiliated with PETA do, such as vegetarianism and veganism, going all the way to some of the more extreme things, such as the abolition of the concept of pet ownership entirely. So this graphic, not only is it true to what the founder of PETA believes, if anything, it's kind of understating the extent of what she actually believes on pet ownership. Newkirk went on to say this about pets. If people want toys, they should buy inanimate objects. If they want companionship, they should seek it with their own kind. In the end, I think it would be lovely if we stopped this whole notion of pets altogether. So that whole statement is both a very bold and very British thing to say about the concept of pet ownership. Mind you, dogs have been coexisting with human beings even before the dawn of recorded history, going back 30,000 years. But okay, it would be lovely if we could just get rid of it altogether, put it in the dustbin if we could, if we could. I feel like that's something that's fundamentally outside the mainstream of what most people think, and even probably what most vegans think, but that's not even all of it. We can take a look at the will of Ingrid Newkirk, and it's very hard to question the commitment of a woman who wants this done to her body after she dies. That the meat of my body, or a portion thereof, be used for a human barbecue, to remind the world that the meat of a corpse is all flesh, regardless of whether it comes from a human being or another animal, and that flesh foods are not needed. Alright, I'll be the first to say it. I think Ingrid's a little selfish. You know, she doesn't have a properly prepared will for her next of kin. Because she doesn't even specify for this Ingrid BQ what type of sauce to use, what type of dry rub, what type of wood to be used to roast her. I mean, it's very selfish to leave these decisions to your grieving family in the wake of your death, Ingrid. I would get that straightened out right away. Newkirk herself has at times expressed sympathy for people who would burn down laboratories that are doing animal testing, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding PETA's possible ties to more militant animal rights group. But it's important to take these claims particularly with a bit of a grain of salt, because they come from kind of the anti-PETA, meat PETA, or META, if you will. So if you Google PETA on the internet, you're going to find their official websites, but very quickly on Google, you're going to find two websites in particular. One of them is called PETAKillsAnimals.com, which is a very subtle name, great job guys, and another website called the Center for Consumer Freedom, which is again another very subtle name for a different reason. Now the Center for Consumer Freedom actually runs both of these websites, which were initially founded by a man named Rick Bergman, and it kind of annoys me that he has over half my name in his name, because Rick Bergman is a little bit of a scammer. The company was initially founded after he got a $600,000 seed fund from Philip Morris, the infamous big tobacco company. They were also funded by the meat lobby and giant restaurant groups who all benefit from selling meat. Then Rick Bergman went on to go hire his own consulting company to consult for the company he owned, therefore taking a lot of that money and putting it directly in his pocket. Can't fault the guy for a good corruption scheme. Am I right? Whatever money happened to not go into Mr. Bergman's pockets went to these websites, which are poorly maintained and are an attempt to delegitimize PETA even more so than they already do themselves. Again, we're getting to that point too. And obviously, given the sources of their funding, the CCF and PETAKillsAnimals.com are not neutral sources and have to be evaluated as such. And they also use this money to run a very stupid blog with such bangers as, "No, vegan chicken wings aren't becoming a Super Bowl staple," and "Your eggs don't cost enough," says elitist vegan journalist. Now, I noticed they've put the word journalist in quotes, I assume in an attempt to delegitimize this person, which is rich, coming from a website that's most popular article is from 2022 and has not been updated in several months. And there is a frequently asked question, which I would hope would cause the person writing it to maybe have some introspection and self-thought, where they were asked, are you guys the bad guys? In which they say, obviously, no, we're not. Yeah. Let's look at the overall impact of PETA objectively. I want to talk about something that I think often gets lost in the discussion about PETA, and that's the inarguable positive contributions they've made to society and to collective animal welfare. PETA, for all their criticism, does use a portion of their funds to actually improve the material conditions of animals. It also uses that money to pay a 22-person social media team, but I digress. Per their website, quote, in 2022, PETA helped more than 27,000 animals from more than 250 cities and spent more than $3,028,000 on companion animal services locally. That's $3 million. That's a lot of animals whose lives were materially made better by the presence of PETA that perhaps wouldn't have had that happen had PETA not existed. I do hope the rest of that money was not spent on that Say Cheese ad, though. That aside, the group does actually do a lot of very important investigative journalism, undercover operations to expose violations in existing law and poor conditions for animals, and then they also take up a lot of legal battles fighting laws that are passed to prevent this sort of thing from happening under the basis of this is just kind of a comical violation of the First Amendment and free speech, so that's all benefit. Like, the stronger free speech is, the better off we are, and frankly, it's better to know about these abuses that PETA is exposing, so that in the cases where people are violating the law, they can actually be brought to justice. That's all pretty positive. Even when you factor for bias as to where this information is coming from, and when you go out and find neutral, independent sources, PETA as an organization has done stuff and does stuff that is categorically horrible. There's a bit of an urban legend that PETA goes around looking for people's pets to kill, which is not technically the truth, but there is one very heavily publicized incident where that exact thing happened. They got into a whole lot of legal trouble and PR trouble when there was a chihuahua on this guy's porch and two PETA employees in a PETA van. That's kind of how they got caught. They were in the van with their logo, not exactly a great way to do a crime, but they tried to enlist the help of two local kids to coerce the chihuahua to come with them. And then when that didn't work, they just went up on the guy's porch, took the chihuahua, put it in the van, and then drove off. 2 days later, they returned with a fruit basket and a note telling this man, hey, sorry, your chihuahua died. Which, I don't know what the most insulting part of this story is, if it's the fact that they murdered this chihuahua, or the fact that they thought a fucking fruit basket would make up for it. Because if there's one thing that I would love after someone murders my dog, it's a chocolate-covered strawberry, except the fact that they're PETA, so it would have to be vegan. You're at best getting a very sad bunch of cantaloupe and an overripe bit of pineapple that tastes like salt. So thanks, PETA. They ended up settling for $50,000 for killing this guy's dog, which, if you've ever seen Judge Judy, is a comically large amount of money to get for murdering a dog. Because at most, somebody sues you, takes you to small claims court, Judge Judy will be like, listen, I know you're very sad, but a dog's worth $2,000, so regardless of how much you loved it, that's what you're getting. Ruling goes to the plaintiff. Next case. Then he's like, well, I love my dog, but I wish I could have gotten more. This guy got $50,000. $50,000. And they got into a ton of trouble because, shockingly, it is not the best PR to be murdering people's dogs. And the other most common claim to talk about how PETA is bad is the fact that they kill a lot of animals in their shelters, which obviously is repeated in the website domain PETAkillsanimals.com. Gosh, I wonder what they're accusing PETA of doing. But they operate a shelter where they're headquartered in Virginia that is, shall we say, controversial. Well, the state of Virginia actually mandates all animal shelters report the amount of animals that they adopt, give to families, transfer to other facilities, or have to end up euthanized. And then they make that data public, and we can look at it with regards to PETA's shelter. And the national average for an animal that's being sent to a animal shelter, about 50% of them have to be euthanized. It's incredibly sad. A lot of them just are too sick, have too many behavioral issues, or there's just not enough space. There is a really big problem with overpopulation with dogs and cats who have not been spayed or neutered, which is one of the things that PETA does make a priority of offering free or low-cost spaying and neutering. But the kill rates in PETA's facility are a lot higher than almost anything else. Over the past 2 decades or so, their average kill rate per year is 81%, meaning that 81 out of every 100 animals brought to a PETA shelter are euthanized, with in some years it peaking up to 97% of all animals being euthanized. Now, PETA's defense for this is that they take in animals that no one else will. They'll take in any animal, whereas a lot of no-kill shelters have to be very selective, and they have to basically vet, okay, can this animal be adopted? Yes, then we'll take him in. If not, no, then we'll give them to PETA. Now, there is some truth to this, but it's also kind of a lie on PETA's behalf. So PETA claims that basically all the animals coming into their shelter are animals that just need a clean way out of life. There's no path forward to them to be adopted. But due to testimony from former employees, that's basically a lie. We can't even take that claim at face value. In doing research for this video, I dug deep and I found testimony from 2 former PETA employees who contended that the point of they only euthanize animals who can't be adopted is basically a lie. One of them spoke under affidavit in court, and I'll summarize some of what she said. The main purpose of the Community Animal Project was to persuade people to surrender their animals so that PETA could then euthanize the animals. On getting hired by PETA, a type of indoctrination took place about the need to kill and that the best thing to do was to kill them humanely. I was ordered to do whatever I had to do to get custody of the animals, and I was instructed to do and say anything I could to induce people to give me possession of their dogs and cats. This included our telling people that PETA would find a good home for their dog and cat when we knew that PETA had no intention of trying to find the animals' homes, but would instead euthanize them almost immediately. We would routinely euthanize healthy puppies and kittens and other highly adoptable animals. So I know this video kind of took like a dark turn, which I didn't expect when researching it, but I feel like I would be completely doing you a disservice if I didn't talk about this when talking about PETA as an organization. The other employee testimony I found basically confirmed everything that was in that affidavit with regards to their attitudes on euthanasia, but also, if you weren't entirely on board with everything believed in by the founder, Newkirk, by the euthanasia policy, and also by their controversial advertising campaigns, then you should leave, and if you don't, you'll be ostracized. And speaking of their controversial advertising campaigns, they have advertising campaigns that aren't just a bunch of naked people at Thanksgiving. They have ones that are genuinely pretty offensive. So I want to briefly get into some of PETA's most controversial advertising campaigns that were justifiably flagged as incredibly offensive. One of the most well-known ones is the Holocaust on Your Plate campaign, which directly called how we eat animals the same as the Holocaust, essentially, and used the likeness of one of the most well-known authors who survived the Holocaust and then wrote about it, Elie Wiesel, who said it was one of the worst things to happen to him in his life, which, mind you, this man survived the Holocaust. So, I guess it really shouldn't be surprising that Elie Wiesel didn't really care too much to see a Big Mac compared to one of the worst tragedies in human civilization. But speaking of one of the worst tragedies of human civilization, let's look at their other campaign 2 years later. You've tried anti-Semitism, why not try racism? With the Are Animals the New Slaves campaign. This campaign compared eating animals to the institution of American slavery, and I really shouldn't have to get into why that's so wildly offensive, and I shouldn't really have to tell you why comparing the plight of millions of people who were enslaved to animals was taken the wrong way by most people. They should have gone with something a little more subtle, like the new N-word campaign, and then actually that N-word is nugget. Surprisingly, that campaign is slightly less dehumanizing than the one they went with. And if racism wasn't enough to sell veganism, 3 years later they flirted with the autism scandal with their Got Autism campaign, parodying the very famous Got Milk ads and claiming that yes, if you drink milk, you're going to get autism. And this campaign got in a lot of shit because it said they were attacking people with autism and saying that autism is an inherently negative thing, which, what gave it away? The giant frowny face? And it goes without saying that drinking milk does not give you autism. So if that was your concern with drinking milk, you're safe from that, but you're not safe from me ridiculing you if you're a person over the age of 8 drinking milk. They've also notoriously used the power of sexism to sell their advertisements and featuring a variety of nearly nude women, including but not limited to their lettuce ladies. They've also gotten in a lot of trouble for showing very brutal images to kids, which, who would have thought that showing Ronald McDonald brandishing a bloody knife would be bad for the development of a child who doesn't really know better. They also released a comic with popular McDonald's characters murdering a chicken, which, not suitable for children, but I'm going to be honest, it does kind of go hard. So where does this leave us at the end of the day regarding PETA? I think it's undeniable that they do use some of their money to further their charitable mission of increasing animal welfare and making life better for animals. But at the same time, it's very clear that PETA is a deeply, deeply flawed organization. Their advertisements and media strategy routinely make veganism a laughingstock, a punchline, rather than something that could be possible or even desirable to do if you want to improve the quality of life for a lot of animals in these farming conditions and help the planet. It's hard to take anything that PETA says seriously when they have such a bad record with taking care of their own animals, believe things that are fundamentally out of step with 98% of people, such as the fact that all pets should be abolished, and in most cases, it's better for a pet to be euthanized rather than have a chance at life. That's just not something most people believe. And that's to say nothing about the idea of being a vegan or being a vegetarian, although who knows if the world had been formed differently and turkeys were at the top of the food chain. I don't know if turkeys would be moral enough to not eat humans. To be honest with you, turkeys kind of give me a bad vibe. I don't think there would be a vegan movement in the turkey community, but you never know. So has PETA done positive things to further their goal of better rights for animals and better conditions for animals? Well, yes, but you also have to measure that against everything they do to set it back every time they open their mouths on Twitter and post a bizarre comic with a bunch of naked people being eaten by animals. If you actually want to improve animal conditions and animal welfare, I would suggest donating to your local shelter or trying to eat less meat, rather than giving money to this incredibly flawed organization. But that's going to do it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it was long. I know it had kind of a much more serious tone, but I really do love doing this research, talking about stuff that I feel is important, and we have the laughs when we can, obviously. There's a lot to laugh about with PETA. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know, was I completely off base with this? Do you agree with me, disagree with me? PETA good, bad, you know? Leave a comment. I love reading I read all the comments, so let me know your thoughts. Appreciate you. See you for the next one. Next video, Oscar video. A little bit more uplifting, hopefully. But yeah, hope you enjoyed. See you later. As always, my name is Patrick, but my friends call me Pat. Got it right in there at the end.